it's not going to be finished unless I send it. I can continue to just tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak, and it'll never, ever go anywhere. And the longer I keep it, the longer I have an excuse to just keep tweaking it.
Nothing is better for creativity than a deadline.
Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. In the show, my guests and I explore how we can use creativity to do our best work and live our best lives. I talk with authors, musicians, actors, scientists, and others who are all pushing the envelope to live fully, creatively, and authentically. Listen in to get the scoop on how you can do it too. Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I am so thrilled you're here. And I'm thrilled with today's guests. Renée Camus and Alex Bradley are a married couple who are both artists in their own right, and they have done some really amazing things together and separately. And I wanted to talk to them specifically, not just because we've been friends for years, because, let's get that out of the way first, but also because they have taken the leap and have made creativity the focus of their lives. So I'm going to give you their bios because they're so fascinating, and then I'm going to introduce them to you, and you're going to love them. Here's Alex. Alex's bio is this. He has over 20 years experience as an illustrator and a multimedia designer. He founded an independent video and animation production studio in the DC area before moving to Los Angeles. And now he balances writing and illustrating the webcomic Miskatonic You, which, by the way, if you are into Lovecraft, you will love Miskatonic You. I just have to say that, with doing visual effects for television shows such as Robot Chicken and Naked and Afraid. And I'm dying to find out what he does as far as visual effects for Naked and Afraid, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Renée Camus is a writer and a dancer, and she's also in LA because they're married to each other. And she produced a dance video called Dancing Through the Centuries, which I love, and you should find it. It's really cool. And she also teaches regularly at Culver City English Country Dance. She's been published in the Los Angeles Times, LA Magazine, LA Weekly, Entertainment Weekly, the New York Observer, and the Toast, and others. And this is really cool. If you're a Joss Whedon geek, you're going to love this. She recently published a chapter called Joss Whedon and the Geek Musical in the Routledge Companion to the Contemporary Stage Musical. So you can tell that these two people who are wildly creative are both really interestingly interconnected, and they made the move from the DC area to Los Angeles to pursue their creative dreams. So Alex and Renée, I'm thrilled to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you so much. Wow, I'm blushing.
Oh, don't worry. No one can see you. This is a podcast.
Oh, good.
Okay. So I am, first of all, I am thrilled that you're both here because I've been thinking about, a lot about with the direction of this podcast about this idea of what we're willing to do for our creativity, for that to sort of satisfy that creative muse. And you two had a life and jobs and friends and family on the East Coast, and then went, you know what, we're moving to LA. And I would love to know what happened. What did you do?
No.
Well, I can talk a little bit about this. I feel like in some ways I'm motivated to move a little more. I was working at a consulting firm called Booz Allen Hamilton in the DC area. And when you work in DC, everything somehow is tangential to government work.
Mm-hmm.
Politics.
In politics. The work I was doing was creating informational graphics for DARPA, the research agency that is sort of an arm of the Defense Department.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, I'm starting to yawn just talking about it. It was a solid job. It paid very well. It paid for the beautiful house we lived in. It was the people there were great. There was really nothing to complain about the job except that I felt like my soul was dying. Mm. Especially since the work kind of moved from more interesting animation work to basically cleaning up PowerPoints. Mm. And I just felt like I spent a good 8-9 years at this job and just saw it continuing that way indefinitely. And I didn't see any room to explore my own work. I had a long commute and everything too. And so I was exhausted at the end of the day. I just didn't feel like it was a creative outlet. it was pretty miserable, as Renee can attest.
Yeah. They're also, I just want to say too, that if the thing about government jobs also is that they can vary a lot depending on the administration. And so, like the George W. Bush administration was going to have a different thing, different approach to stuff than the Obama administration. And some were maybe more creative than others. And you know what I mean? So it's just something to remember that, I mean, either way, he's not dealing with his own projects. He's got to do what other people want him to do and then just be
Well, that hasn't changed in a way.
No, that's true, but
anyway, so, but I mean, I was definitely miserable, and Renee could tell. And it's the sort of thing that can really affect a marriage after a while if you don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, we did talk about it, and we talked seriously about it, and we talked about what we could do to make it better. And there was a lot of hemming and hawing because we weren't so embedded in our community. I mean, the house we lived in had a ballroom, and it still does. The new owners still use it for dancing,
which is awesome. Yeah.
So we were kind of the center for dance in our community.
For sure.
And we felt like leaving that would basically leave a giant hole. Not only, we wouldn't get to see our friends, but our friends wouldn't have this place to connect and get together. So just leaving for something new didn't just affect us; it affected a lot of people, and it made the decision that much harder.
It sounds so conceited, but it's really true.
Yeah, I don't think it's conceited at all. I mean, I was one of the members of that community, and you're describing pretty much exactly how many of us felt. You two in many ways were the epicenter, and not just because of the ballroom, but because you had this beautiful TV room, and you would host parties like, let's watch the Oscars or let's watch this movie. And so your place, and you made that space for people to come and gather. That was something that was a real joy to those of us who got to participate.
Yeah. I definitely want to emphasize that the decision was incredibly hard to make.
Yeah.
Because I was very comfortable with the paycheck and the benefits and everything of the job I had. I didn't know how, if I just quit the job and stayed where we were, I did not know how we would be able to sustain our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who are thinking about making a creative move, it is a huge decision. And definitely one that you have to consult other people to make.
But at the same time, I definitely could see that he felt locked in to this job. He felt like this job was the only option we had because of the house, basically. And because like he said, if he tried to quit and get a different job, it was going to be very difficult to find one that would pay enough to cover this house. And we could try to move into a smaller house or an apartment or something and just stay in the area. But why do that? If we're going to move, we might as well move.
Plus, and yeah, like I said, every other job was going to be as connected to the government in its own way. And what I really wanted to do was see if I could do the same kind of work, but for the entertainment industry, which is an industry I actually really love.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and that's something that is now you're doing work in the entertainment industry, which I think is great. So when
a little bit, just a little bit.
It is a pretty cool thing to see your name in the credits of a TV show.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. And and you, Renee, you write for the LA Times and Entertainment Weekly, which is also in the entertainment industry. Yeah. How do you two pursue those career goals separately and together nowadays?
Well, if I'm honest, I'm not doing as much of that as I was, and it's very, very, very difficult. And in fact, I'm so bummed because my timing with entertainment, with E-Dubs is what I call Entertainment Weekly. My timing kind of sucked with them because I got in with them as a fact checker, as a freelance fact checker.
Mm-hmm.
basically 4 months before they went to a monthly print schedule.
Mm.
They were weekly, they would print weekly, and then they dropped down to monthly. And they made a ton of cutbacks, fired or let go some people who had been there for years, and here I was as a brand new freelancer. And so I haven't actually worked with them for a while. And the woman, my contact there, says I'm at the top of her list if something, if they need help with stuff, but who knows if they, so like it's the journalism industry right now is in really deep poop, as lots of industries are right now. But so it's, so it's hard, and it's a lot of, pounding the pavement that I don't always want to do, if I'm honest.
I don't know if it seems like it's more true with the entertainment industry than other industries, but I think this is true for a lot of industries. It is a networking game. You meet people, and they get you the job, not a resume.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you say that, because I was going to ask you, well, there's entertainment industry here up in New York City where I am, and I was going to say, well, what made you want to move to LA instead of New York? And that idea of networking, did you know people in the LA area that were going to be part of your network, or were you coming in completely brand spanking new?
We had some friends, but they weren't that connected. I mean,
I think it's kind of a mix,
Yeah.
really, because first of all, as far as the New York versus, California thing, sometimes I'm like, why didn't we go to New York? But I'll tell you, this is going to sound terrible, but the honest reason, I'm from New York and I just didn't want to go back there. My parents are there. I love them dearly, but I didn't want to live with them. I didn't want to, I've sort of been there, done that with
Right.
New York, as much as I love it.
Right.
So,
Right.
And New York,
Well-
I don't know. LA is more movies and TV also, I feel like. Even though plenty of movies and TV happen in New York, LA feels more like the center for new movies and TV.
And I think we had taken a vacation to LA a couple years before we made the big move, and did some studio tours.
Went to Comic-Con.
Went to Comic-Con. Yeah, and basically you could just be walking along the street, and a complete stranger, if you have any kind of conversation, it'll be about pop culture and entertainment. And that was exciting.
It's just in the atmosphere there. It's like osmosis. It's kind of amazing here.
Yeah, I believe it.
But then, what was the other part of the question? I was going to say something else.
New York.
About knowing people.
Networking.
Yeah. So it's sort of a little bit of both in terms of knowing people, because what we did before we moved was we looked on Facebook for anybody and everybody who we've ever known who might be in this area. So like we contacted a bunch of high school friends who we haven't seen since high school, pretty much, and just was like, hey, we're coming to LA, let's get together, that kind of thing. Which was great, because then we got to see very old friends and catch up with them, and also talk about, because they're all here because they're working in the business in some way or another.
And actually, they really want to help friends out.
Yeah.
They're always like having they have their feelers out, and when somebody asks them, hey, do you know somebody who could do this, they want to be able to recommend somebody.
Yeah.
So it's not a perfect system, especially if you're an introvert like I am, but it is essential to getting work here, I think.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, and I think that it's essential here in New York also. That I moved. We moved, Rich and I, my husband and I moved, and Rich, of course, but for those of you listening, my husband, Rich, and I moved from DC to New York City this past June. I can't believe it's been almost a year. That's wacky. It's just completely wacky to me. But he came in with all of his clown buddies, because many of his circus buddies and circus performer people are here. So he came in with a network of people that was already set, and I didn't. And it's really interesting, because I came in and I was sort of doing who do I know in New York? I have friends in New York, but I don't have any friends in the industry that I want to work in. So what do I do? Right. And what was interesting to me is that while I didn't have friends here who knew people or whatever, what I did do is I actually took classes. I started taking classes and met all of my good friends, well, except one. I met them all through these classes I took. But one person I met on the subway. I was literally in the subway and the M train was wacky. And this woman comes up and says, "Is the M train wacky?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And I was brand new here. And she's like, "Well, I have to get to Brooklyn, so I guess I'll take a bus." And I was just like, "Can I come with you, please? Because I have no idea how to get home from here." And we became friends, and she's my dearest friend here in New York. So I'm wondering, do you have, her name is Megan and she's great. Do you have those kinds of stories? Have you just struck up those kinds of conversations and all of a sudden you're fast friends with people? Is that the culture in LA?
I
Yes and
think
no.
I think everyone wants that to happen. They all go to Starbucks with that in mind. That could be the place where the magical conversation happens.
Mhm.
It hasn't quite happened that way for me yet, although I feel like it's come close a couple times. For me, I mean, I went to classes as well.
Mhm.
I don't want to get too much into that, but basically, I did get my first big job on Naked and Afraid from a teacher who worked there.
Mm.
My teacher basically worked on Naked and Afraid and invited me over to join that.
I will say that I think it's true that that hasn't really happened for us, but we do have one story where that kind of connects everything, because when we, hold on a second, excuse me, before we moved here, we came out for a long weekend and looked at apartments, and we looked at 21 apartments.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
Looked at 21 apartments in 3 days, which was kind of insane.
yeah,
It
that
was
was
a lot.
madness.
And of course, the last 2 places we looked at were like the winners. We finally saw one place and it was amazing and we loved it. But we had an appointment to see one more, and we're like, okay, let's go check it out. And then the one more we loved even more, and that's the one we ended up moving into. But while part of the reason we loved it is because while we were there, the landlady was giving us a tour
Mhm.
of the place, and there was a couple of, like, she showed us the pool area. Every building has a pool here in LA, by the way.
Yeah,
Nice.
So it raised it on me.
and every
but-
apartment has a fireplace for some.
I know. So weird.
For those cold LA winter nights. What?
So strange.
They don't
Anyway,
give you a fridge, but they give you a fireplace.
you usually have to buy your own fridge. It's weird. But anyway, excuse
Wow.
me. So she's giving us a tour of the pool area, and there were a couple of people there, and we started, she introduced us and we were chatting, blah, blah, blah. And one of them worked at the school where Alex ended up taking places. And she basically was our connection to everything. So she hooked him up with the school,
Mhm.
which was good and bad. But then there he met this teacher friend, and then, that person connected him with the job, and just everything kind of interconnected from that one meeting.
Yeah.
And that's why we took the apartment, because it was so clear that we were right in the epicenter of everything that was
Exactly.
happening. It was amazing.
Yeah, that was great.
Synchronicity played a real role there. I love it. And those kinds of connections are so valuable on a personal level too, that you can start feeling like you're at home, you know.
Yeah.
Did it take a long time to feel at home in LA, or were you both like, "Yep, this is where I'm supposed to be"?
In some ways, I still don't feel quite at home, but I definitely feel like it's where I should be.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
It comes and goes. It ebbs and
It
flows,
does.
especially when I'm like out of work and looking for work. Then I feel like, what am I doing here? Because the work is very gig.
Yeah.
It's based on the production of a show. When the show's production is done, they generally lay people off. I've been very fortunate on Naked and Afraid that the show has been super popular and continued on for a couple of years. But even that was starting to become a little bit of a rut. And the job, let me just do a sidebar and explain what the job was. Visual effects on a show like Naked and Afraid is blurring nudity. So, and believe it or not, you can get tired of doing it.
Somehow I'm not surprised, but yet, okay.
So So, I mean, I was out of work for a little while pursuing more of my writing stuff, and then was starting to feel anxious. So I, kind of poked the people I had met along the way to see if there was any other kind of work out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got the job at Stupid Buddy, which is the stop motion animation studio that does Robot Chicken and a lot of ads and other animated shows. And that felt like a move in the right direction because I've always been a huge fan of animation, and I really enjoy that job.
That was you have been kind of lucky because working, again, Naked and Afraid happened to be a very popular show that is still running, still airing new episodes as far as I know. But that doesn't always happen, more often a show gets picked up, plays for a season, maybe, and then it's canceled.
Yeah.
And you have to look for another job,
Oh yeah, that wasn't the only show I worked on at Renegade.
True.
I must have worked on about 10 shows, and Naked and Afraid is the only one that was a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the gig economy works there, huh?
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
It does. But
you have to be ready to be able to, weather a couple months on your own doing other stuff, or, really maintaining your contacts and network.
Yeah, it's good and bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you're working, it's great.
Yeah.
Sure. But, it seems like those times sort of, I hesitate to use the word off, but time off, it gives you time to pursue your own passion projects. And that takes me right to the questions that I wanted to ask about what you're doing sort of outside work, right? So Alex, you're the artist behind Miskatonic You, and I would love it. I know it's a webcomic and I read it, but I would love for you, in your words, to tell me what it's about and what drew you to create it.
Okay. Well, let's see. I started it almost immediately once we moved to LA, because even before I had any kind of steady work lined up, I was, I guess, still going to school, or maybe not even.
Yeah.
I started it right away because it felt like what I had come to LA to do was do something creative.
And I don't want to take credit, but I will. Because I feel like I kind of pushed you a little bit into it, and it was like August, I think, and classes started in September, so it was before we had been here maybe a month.
Yeah.
And neither of us had started any classes yet. I will just backtrack and say classes are a huge thing to do, because if not, like, we took classes more for the networking than for the learning. The learning was great.
Oh yeah.
But it was really the networking that was useful in classes. So I'm all for that. But I feel like I sort of pushed you a little bit into it, because I knew that you wanted to do it anyway, but the comic, but you were starting already to get into this. Oh, I don't know what to do. Should I do this? Should I do that? How should I approach this? What should I do? And I said, just put something out there, anything, just put a splash page, whatever, just kind of a, here's what I'm doing, Miskatonic You, boom, and just let the chips
to this day, it's my worst failing that when I get involved in a project, I just plug away and never really am ready to send it out in the world. Miskatonic You started the same way. I had these very elaborate plans for what it would be. I'm a huge Lovecraft fan, and part of moving out here was admitting to myself that I could be a rabid fan of anything. Like, I'd always been sort of I like Firefly, I like Buffy, I like Lovecraft, but do I love them? And I think for the first time I could say, yeah, I do. and could really dive into, like, letting my freak flag fly a little bit. So I really dove into coming up with an idea that would, like, last. And I figured a university would be a good setting for that. I could kind of tell stories from my college days and my social anxieties growing up, but I guess the hook wound up being that, yes, the monsters and unknowns in Lovecraft are terrifying, world-changing, etc. But what actually scares the main character more is talking to a girl.
And boy, is the main character scared to talk to a girl.
I know, right?
So I found that dynamic really fun to play with. But yeah, like Renee said, I had like, I didn't know whether I needed to outline the entire year of like stories before I could even get started. And if she hadn't pushed me to just start it before I was ready, I think there would still not be a webcomic out there. I think I need to emphasize that. Put things out there before they're ready. It's the best teaching tool. I've learned so much about writing and committing to a project just by not waiting until I was 100% ready with something.
And it's terrifying. It's terrifying. But in a way, that's the lesson. Like, you know, you can be
use
afraid,
that energy.
Right. Be afraid all you want. Just don't let it stop you from doing what you need to do.
Right. Seth Godin says it's not finished until it sends, and I think that's so true. You know, it's like you can sit there and make yourself crazy, or you can end it. You know, and then it's finished, and then you move on, and there's something very freeing about that. But
the other rule was, which I learned from Neil Gaiman.
Yes.
When I went to a book fair one day, got him to sign something. I said, I muscled up the nerve to say, I hope you'll read something of mine someday. And he said, finish stuff.
Yeah.
So I love to start things, but I have a hard time finishing them. And I'm very proud that Miskatonic You is something that I've actually followed through on.
Yay.
And you should be, because it's great. And you know what's really interesting? What you just said is so funny to me, because you said you love starting and you're good at starting, but you have trouble finishing. And I want to ask you to think about, is it finishing it or is it thinking it's finished?
Well, I've gotten when you move to LA, you pretty much learn how to do screenwriting because everyone's a secret screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about storytelling and a 3-act structure and everything from learning screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And I apply that to the webcomic. So
Mm-hmm.
I do have an idea of when this story is done.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished a season of it a year, or like, I guess it was a semester actually. 3 years of work, and I only got through half a year of school.
Time is different in Lovecraft. Time is different.
Absolutely. But so it did seem like it was going to stretch on forever and ever. But I did eventually know where the story was going to go and where it was going to end, at least for that semester. And the same is true for the new season I'm currently working on. It's still very far away, but I do have a feeling of when stuff is done. Now that I have actually finished a thing or two, I do have a better feeling of when something's done.
I have two things I want to say. One is that I believe a little bit who did you quote? Said
Seth Godin.
Yeah. What did he say? It's not finished till it's sent? Yeah,
till it sends. You know, you can keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweak, or you can just go, you know what? I'm sending it. That's it. It's done.
I believe that because often for my stuff, it's not going to be finished unless I send it. You know?
Exactly.
That's exactly right. I can continue to just tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak, and it'll never ever go anywhere. And the longer I keep it, the longer I have an excuse to just keep tweaking it.
Nothing is better for creativity than a deadline.
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
Oh God, yes. But the other thing I want to say is I feel like you kind of have to decide what finished means for you. And what I mean by that is if you're writing, you know, what do you want out of this? Because if you're writing a story, it's not just about, did I tell the story I want to tell? It's about, now what? You know, do I want to publish this book? Or whatever it is. Do I want to print it somewhere? Do I want to put it on my website and put it out in the world for people to see for free? Do I want to try to, you know, pitch it to a literary journal and have them publish it? Do I want, you know, what is your end goal? Because for and this is something
Or
that,
does it just make you happy to know that you've written it and no one else needs to see it?
exactly. What do you want out of it? And this is something that I feel like we argue about, which so I'm afraid to bring it up.
Okay.
But
It's
like
part of the process.
we, he's told me in the past that he wants to get his stories out into the world, but then he'll finish writing a story and I think it's great, and then that's it. And so the next step, it's still, and the story may be done, but it's not done. It's not finished because you haven't sent it out into the world or done whatever you think the next step is.
Right.
In my defense, those are usually first drafts.
Yes, that's true. But but my point still stands, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny because like looking at my own life, I've written 6 books. For Pete's sake, I've written 6 books and I still have trouble thinking of myself as a writer. I can think of myself as a singer or as a teacher, but as a writer, I'm like, oh, I don't know. And Rich is always like,
that never goes away.
I know.
no, I don't think it does. And I think that that's part of the, is it finished? I say to myself, and I'm going to ask you both, since you're both writers in one way or another, this is something that happens to me while I'm in a project. I always think to myself, I hope I am a good enough writer to do justice to my idea. Do you ever have that feeling that like I have this idea I think is really great, but I'm just not sure I'm writer enough to make it actually be what I want it to be?
Oh yeah.
Definitely. And even when I have the confidence to say, well, I'm the only person who can tell this story, it comes out as, but is it going to be what I really was hoping it would be?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I think that's the main reason why it never gets, past the point of finishing the story to sending it out into the world, because
I'm not happy with it.
Yeah. Or just, or the whole, imposter syndrome or lack of confidence or whatever it is you want to call it is getting in the way and saying, no, this isn't what gives you the right to send this out, and what gives you the right to send this out is because you're doing it.
Right.
Just do it.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, one of you, and I don't remember who in the moment, said that you're the only person who can tell the story. But you are. No one else has your viewpoint. No one else has your life experience. No one else has your imagination. So no one is going to tell this story the way you would tell it. And that's the key.
Original.
Yeah. But it's really funny, as an artist, like drawing, I look at stuff I draw and go, yeah, it looked very different in my head, So, and that's one of the reasons I don't really draw. But that idea of, if you're trying something creative, that judgment immediately, like let's say you've never drawn anything in your life, and you're drawing and you're trying your hand. Let's say you get drawing on the right side of the brain out of the library or something, I don't know, and you've decided to do that. Do you have any advice, either of you, as artists, for someone who's decided, this is something I want to try, but what I envision isn't what's coming out? What would you suggest to someone who's just starting? What are your thoughts on that?
Practice more. Sometimes there's talent, but there's a lot to be said for training. I do feel like artists can be trained and don't necessarily need to have a natural talent, but if that's going to work, you do need to practice a lot and find the things to, like, whether it's pictures out of a magazine to try to replicate, or if you can't find a live model somewhere, or a drawing class, find the sort of the things you enjoy drawing, or the art that you like, imitate for a while. There's nothing wrong with that. Find out what's working in the stuff you like, and imitate for a while. And eventually you'll find your own style in that. But yeah, I mean, I doodled in my notebooks from the time I was a child. So when I say, like, I've been an illustrator for over 20 years, that's what it takes. I still don't feel like I'm a great illustrator.
I know many who would disagree with you on that, but go on.
I mean, I've seen some illustrations that blow me away, and I feel like I'll never be at that level. So the kind of imposter syndrome that writers get, it's there for artists too. Oh, and if you just release that kind of stuff before it's ready too, I feel like it's pretty parallel to writing. It doesn't have to necessarily be perfect. There'll be fans of it out there.
Yeah, I've heard it said perfect is the enemy of the good enough, you know?
Oh,
So Renee, what about you? What are your thoughts on that with writing and this idea of advising someone who's just beginning, who's just starting out?
Yeah, I agree. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking classes, definitely. And it's easy to find classes, especially in writing and art and stuff.
Mhm.
There's so many classes online. Holy crap, everywhere. And you can go in person or online, whatever. Um, um, I my big thing, and here's the thing about me, is that I'm very good at giving advice that I don't follow myself.
That
But
just makes you and every other person on the planet, I think. So welcome to the club. We have cookies.
sometimes I do, but yeah, often I don't. But no, my big thing is basically just go for it. Go for it anyway. Again, you can be afraid, but don't let it stop you from doing what you want to do. And what's the worst? Alex and I play this game all the time, and it makes me crazy because
well, I do.
he
You're
comes
going to
up
hear a
with
little sub version of this argument in a minute. So you go first.
basically, what I was going to say is, what's the worst that could happen if you put it out there or whatever? And he always has some bullshit excuse for what can happen, and he goes to the most insane places.
Well, okay, the downside of taking a screenwriting class or reading a screenwriting book is that there's always the chapter about, now don't send it out before it's ready, because you usually only get one shot with an agent or a producer or something like that. And if the script isn't up to scratch, that was your chance. You'll never have another chance with that person, because they'll see your name and think, oh, that was that terrible script. So that's what cripples me in that aspect. I think it's probably gone too far at this point. I think my writing is probably good enough that I can start sending stuff out.
First of all,
but it still cripples me, that thought that, well, if I screw up this one shot of sending stuff out there, then I'll never work as a writer.
The other thing to me is that you know more about that industry and that part of the industry than I do, but I don't believe it. I call bullshit on that because there are so many stories about people who just get lucky. There are so many stories about, people who sell their screenplay without an agent or whatever it is. There's so many stories about, this happening and that happening and the other thing happening. You're also, don't take this the wrong way, you're a cis straight white man who gets lots of opportunities, even if you fuck up. Oh, sorry.
Well, that's another crippling thing right now, is I feel like, okay, yeah, I'm a cis white man, middle-aged man. What stories are left that are worth telling from my point of view?
But don't let that stop you. You can't let it stop you. I mean, I am all for women and people of color getting their chance to tell their stories, but you can't let it just stop you from doing what you need to do too, And this is my big thing. My big thing about why not go for it is, don't take away your own opportunity, right? Before you even have the opportunity. Don't cancel yourself before giving other people a chance to cancel you. Does that make sense? Like, if you decide for yourself, I'm not going to send my thing out, then there's no way it's ever going to get accepted anywhere. So don't make the decision for them. Send your stuff out and let them decide if it's crap.
and it's fascinating to me to hear you both your viewpoints on this, because the people that I work with here in New York, a lot of them are just like, whatever it is I'm doing, here it is, and everybody they just put stuff out. And I wonder if it's a difference between New York and LA. But also, I feel very much like, if you don't tell the story, who will?
Yeah.
And as a cis white middle-aged man, you obviously still have stories to tell, because you're telling them. Even if you're not telling a story that's getting seen by billions of people yet, you're still telling the story. The story is still in you, and you still have things you want to say and write and create. And so it's interesting to me that as an artist, and it's not just you, Alex, I'm not trying to single you out, but there are so many people who play incredible music, but only in their bedroom, and write incredible works, but only in their journal, and there's some, and I guess we can call it fear. I'd love to get your thoughts on what that is, because I'd love to just root it out and get it off planet somehow, because it's insidious, and it sits there and it lurks like some yucky putrid thing that makes you feel afraid to express yourself ultimately.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. I'd say 95% of the time it is fear. Like, I'm not sure what the other 5% is, because even if it's I'm
fear,
not good enough,
it's backed up by all the little notes you find along the way that are that nagging little voice saying you can't do this.
So how do we shut that up? How do we, as artists, as creatives, how do we go, yeah, all right, so you can keep talking, but that doesn't mean I have to listen to you. What are your thoughts on that? How do we?
I have 2 thoughts.
Yes.
Only 2.
A mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the teacher I found at that school who got me the job has been a great mentor.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like learning the industry here. But if you like, and I think I have one of those for screenwriting as well now too, which is great. He's been very helpful with critique and stuff like that.
Oh, wonderful.
But that's, I feel like a mentor you almost need to luck into somehow. But what you do have are friends, family, and people who have your back and want you to succeed. And lean on them. They are the voice you need to hear to keep yourself going. So, I mean, for all the things I beat myself up about, Renee is there to push me forward, and vice versa. When she thinks she's not ready for something, I'm the first to say, come on, you know this, you're going to be great. Teach this dance class. So lean on other people. This stuff, I think if we all created in a vacuum, nothing would ever get published. It's knowing that there's someone out there who really wants to see it that pushes it over the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Renee, what are your thoughts?
You reminded me of something else that okay, so I'll come back to that. First of all, I have a group. I have a writers group here that I run. I co-founded a writers group. It's called San Gabriel Valley Women Writers. We're women who write, who meet in the San Gabriel Valley. We kind of need a new title, but whatever. But
an acronym.
Yeah, and I live in San Fernando Valley. I don't even live there. But anyway, and we have meetings every month, and now they're online, so you should come sometime. But
I'd love to.
Yeah, we meet with a different speaker, or we have a guest every month, and we talk about different topics. And in October, I actually brought a panel in to talk about this very subject, about imposter syndrome, and being, what I wanted to call it was embrace your inner white man, or your mediocre inner white man, because there's that saying that was actually written by somebody, a colleague I know, sort of, God give me the confidence of a mediocre white man. But that sounds, very mean.
Right.
But that is the whole point, is that there are so many, and I'm not saying that Alex is one of them, by no means. He is way beyond mediocre, which is why I yell at him to get his stuff out there, because there are plenty of mediocre white men who just go for it anyway. They don't let this stuff, stop them. And there's been studies about how, women will only apply for a job if they feel like they're men will apply for a job when they feel like they are 60% qualified for the job. Women will only apply for the job if they are 100% qualified. And they never feel that way, so they don't apply, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I had a panel talk about this very topic, and it was really good. And I'm just actually looking through my notes. So basically, you have to cut all that shit out. And the thing is, what she said also, Stacy, her name was Stacy Simmons, and she has a class in this too. So I'm just going to kind of put a little plug out for her. I hope that's okay.
Of course.
It's not a logic thing. but it's also an important thing. Like it's often important to sort of listen to that little voice that's saying, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. You're ugly, whatever. And then just say, okay, I hear you, but I'm putting you away anyway. You can go away now. Right. Mm-hmm. What she says too is shame. It's about shame. It's not about guilt. And it's about shame. Right. And so it's hard, in a way, makes it harder to sort of fight it.
Because it's based in emotion, not logic, or what?
Yes, exactly. I think so. And it's the purpose of shame is to keep you looking for someone's external approval, right?
Absolutely.
It also comes from our childhood. It comes from our parents. It comes from all this other stuff, right? So one thing she says is to ask yourself with every rejection, is it shame or guilt? But here's the thing I said before, don't judge yourself before you let them judge you. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's funny what you're saying. It's sort of strikes at the heart of what I'm sure many people feel. It's just really tough to articulate it to yourself and to really accept it when you're going through it in the moment.
And it takes steps to get out of it.
Yeah. And it's not, it absolutely is not easy. So Renee, you said something that I'm gonna call back a little bit. You said that you are really good at giving advice that you don't always use. So how do you apply some of this stuff to your work, to your writing? Like you just had that chapter on Joss Whedon and the Geek Musical published in Routledge. So how did you do that? How did that work? Did you have some of those feelings? And if you did, how'd you handle them?
Yeah. That's a weird one because I feel like I was a little bit in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also funny because that's actually a chapter that I started writing back in 2008. I was writing it I was writing it for another book. And then the editor for that book decided she didn't want it. It wasn't the right,
right fit
style. Yeah, it wasn't the right style. Basically, it was too informal, and she wanted the book to be more scholarly.
Interesting. That's so funny because I thought your chapter was really quite scholarly. Interesting.
I know.
That's okay. What exactly did she want? My goodness, because
it's all relative.
There's a difference between like writing in academies, that jargon that's all like intertextuality and hermeneutics. And having something that still has footnotes but is still readable,
right? That you can actually read and get something out of. If you're and it's funny because if you're an academic, you might be looking for that, but you also, even as an academic, there's a lot more acceptance nowadays of more informal styles of teaching and learning.
Well, I feel like you'll never have a chance to break out onto the mass market or into pop culture if it's so niche, such a niche market.
For sure. So Renee, go on, do tell.
Sorry. So the thing about this book too is that they specifically wanted it to be a little more informal, a little, more. It's a textbook for, what did they say? Undergrads? I think an undergraduate textbook. Mm-hmm. So they wanted it. They wanted it to be a little more informally written. And in fact, when I wrote, I sent them my, drafts of the chapter, and they were like, this is great. We've had to tell other people, we've had to send other people's chapters back to them and tell them to loosen up the language a little bit. So your tone is right on, exactly what we're looking for. And I'm like, great. That's because I don't write academies.
But I do feel like those voices coming back from the editors were one of those things that kept you like motivated and countering the negative voices that always seem to crop up from within.
Yeah, definitely. They're great. And that's the other thing too, is that the editors, the co-editors are friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And I love them. And they're the top scholars in the field. So it's nice, that whole thing about knowing the right people, I guess. And I happen to be, because they're my friends, I was like, I don't think they necessarily thought of me. Mm-hmm. But I was at a conference with them, and I was sitting next to them at dinner at the big banquet that they have at the conference, and they told me about it, and I mentioned that I was, that I have this chapter, and they said, that sounds great. We'd love to, send us a proposal for it.
Can I jump on with a little thing about networking and that knowing, being in the right place in the right time and knowing these like friends in the right places kind of things. I feel like as someone new to the industry or, someone who wants to be creative but not sure if they can, they're going to think, I don't know anybody who's well connected. I don't have these kinds of friends. How am I ever going to succeed? And it's not about finding the friends who are already connected. Your friends, as they are now, are going to help you succeed. It's not necessarily where they are now. It's where they might wind up in the future, but they know you. You might decide, you know what, we should really work on something together with such good friends. That can have good or bad ends, but whatever. You really shouldn't worry necessarily about having the highly placed friends now. Just maintain that network of people you know and love, and support each other.
And you don't necessarily know who they know.
When the opportunity or the success comes, when you need to be ready when the right time comes to be in the right place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. In when I studied karate when I was a kid, rule number 6 is one that has always stuck with me. And it was, the time to strike is when the opportunity presents itself. And I remember when my sensei articulated that, I was like, yeah, that's truism, because it's absolutely true. But it's also, the network, it feels to me like the network that we have, the word network can get kind of a bad name because it's like, oh, what can you do for me, or what have you done for me lately? But rather, I feel like the people who know you and who know where you're coming from and who appreciate the work you're doing, they naturally want to help you, and you can appreciate the work they're doing, and you naturally want to help them. So it's really, to me, a symbiotic relationship that comes out of loving and trusting the people you're friends with.
Yeah.
Oh, and all the advice about professional networking I've gotten here in Los Angeles has been about building friendships, building personal relationships, not
Absolutely.
focusing on the business end of things. Yeah. Like when you're like calling someone to say, hey, can we just sit and chat and have a little, interview? I want to learn about the business that you're in, or I want to learn about the company that you're working for. People love to talk about what they do. So, I mean, if you're trying to work your way into an industry, you could target some people that you maybe don't know direct. I don't know how to say this, but basically you can start from zero. You can just call somebody at a company and say, I'm interested in this industry. Would you be willing to have a coffee with me and talk about some of this stuff?
And if they say no, that's okay. Just go on with your life. But,
But I think showing that kind of interest is already like making it a personal thing. To think of networking as this cold machine of how like nepotistic jobs get handed out is definitely the wrong way to look at it. It is about sort of growing your friendships.
Absolutely. And it's about supporting each other. That's so much of what this is. You just support each other, you help each other out, and that you do because you're friends. And it also happens to have this professional sort of positive result, but it's you're working to help your friends, and that's a lovely and beautiful thing.
Yeah, especially here in LA, especially. I mean, that is LA. That is that's what LA is all about. And it's, and I don't like because it's such a gig network, not a gig economy, rather. It's, as we were saying, it's all about, this project, working on a project, then you can work on the next project, and then eventually you work on the next project, and you never know how long projects are going to last. So you're always working with a new team of people. And so everybody is so friendly and so lovely because, and this is going to sound a little bit cynical, but everybody is so lovely and friendly because you never know who you're going to work with next. And you want to kind of foster those relationships as much as you can. And so it may sound cynical because it's all about, networking, but at the same time, it's lovely because
it goes back to the people who were hoping for that chance encounter at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Strangers on the street are super nice, and it inevitably comes to your mind that, oh, they're only, being nice to me because they are wondering what I can do for them. But if the end result is that people are nice to each other, I think it's fine.
Yeah. As long as they're not driving.
Yeah. Well,
driving is a totally different story.
Yeah. Once they get behind the wheel of a car, it's a different story.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that. That gives me the thought of driving gives me hives.
Yeah.
I live in New York City. I don't drive anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to move here, is that I'd be able to get around public transportation. But yeah, this idea to me of having the confidence to do the creative work, and then having the friendships and for lack of a better term, the network of people who want to support you, it's all towards a goal. And what is the goal then? I'd love to hear from each of you. Renee, what is your goal? Like, you write about pop culture. You've done it for major magazines and major newspapers. What fascinates you about these subjects? How did you start? And what do you want to eventually do?
Those are all very different questions.
I know. We can start with the first one. How did you start? How did you start wanting to write about and explore pop culture and entertainment?
Yeah, these are hard questions for me, actually, especially because I don't, if I'm honest, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. Or what I want to do, really. It's very complicated for me, but I'll be totally honest. I don't have anything to hide. It's that whole imposter syndrome and confidence. I call it confidence more than imposter syndrome, but it's kind of the same thing, because I have always wanted to dance. I've always been a dancer. And then somewhere along the line, I don't know, I let the confidence get to me and said, what the hell am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. And I stepped away for a really long time. And now I'm like trying to get back into that. And I just feel like I lost so much time, and that's just sad. I wish I had, I'm having I was talking to a friend, and she said, you're having a road you didn't take moment. And I'm like, yeah, I really am. I'm feeling this sorrow for the road I didn't stay on is more like it. But because I feel like, again, my career got totally sidetracked, and then I'm trying to put it back on track. And that's more for the dancing stuff than the pop culture stuff. But I'm trying to do both, sort of. I still, even while I was dancing, I was always a writer also, because I would write about dance scholarship,
Mm-hmm.
And so when I moved here, I love pop culture. It just comes from this fact that I love movies. I love television. I love dance. I love dance on television. I love musical theater. And so that's where my passion is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I wanted to write about it. And so I just sort of decided that I was going to do these journalism classes, and I got a certificate in journalism at UCLA Extension when I moved here.
Mm-hmm.
And so many, so much of it is what we've been talking about, which is just sort of go for it. Just, obviously do the work, try to figure out, there is technique to learn about how to write stories and how to interview people and all that kind of stuff, but then just go for it. The thing I was going to say before also that is so important, I think, we had a guest speaker come and talk to one of my classes, and she said this: everyone is looking for content. Everyone needs content. Magazines need content, books, publishers need content, television producers want content. There is so much content being thrown at you now, right? It's overwhelming. But the point is, everyone needs content. Why shouldn't your content be what they put out there? Right? There's no reason for you not to go for it.
Huge slush piles of terrible writing that people have sent them. So anything that's even just a little bit better than that has a pretty good chance of getting through.
Yeah. They need content. Why shouldn't it be yours?
Right. Sure. So within that, this idea of, and I'm, because I was going to get to the whole dance thing. I even have a little sentence in my notes that says, Renee, let's talk dance. So, so I want to talk about that. This idea, it's phenomenal. It's the I'm gonna course correct my career, my life's work, and try to do this, this dual thing of writing and dance. And you said that you feel like it's the road you stopped taking, and now you're trying to get back onto it.
Yeah.
What about it is so different? Is it that you're a little older, or is it just, dancers dance every day? Like, what is it that is the challenge about being a dancer right now for you?
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, first of all, I'm going to be 50 in July, which freaks me out.
Well, as a 53-year-old, I'm here to tell you it ain't that bad.
I know. I know. I mean, it freaks me out more in the sense of how did I get to be living on this earth for 50 years?
Right.
Like where did the time go? That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and I'm I don't know, maybe considering I'm going to be 50, I'm doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are other 50-year-olds who look and feel and act and, move a lot slower or older than I do. I don't know. But I also know, 85-year-olds who are still dancing and stuff. So kudos, it's really amazing. But yeah. So basically I feel I am getting older, and it's hard to balance that line between, you're only as old as you feel, and you are getting older, so why not feel some of these things? Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The sort of realism versus fantasy, I guess, in a way.
But
So
see,
it's hard trying to find that line. So I feel very out of shape. But the main thing as far as my career, I guess, is that I feel like I was on a well, there's a couple of different things that's happening. One is that I feel like I was on a trajectory, and then I pulled myself off of it. But time obviously kept going without me.
Mm.
And now I'm, so it's like a stream, right? I'm in the stream is running. I step out of the stream keeps going. And now I'm trying to step back into the stream at the same place I was, rather than where I should be along with the stream that's traveling. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. And it's weird because if you step away from it, anywhere on the stream you get on the stream or in the stream, you're still in the stream. You may not be in the stream that you might have been if you'd have continued from the age of 14 up to this point, but you're still in the stream. Aren't you? I mean, you are a dancer. The first thing I ever heard about you before I met you, oh, Renee, yeah, she's a dancer. And that was it. And so to me, I think, yeah, I have a lot of the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak moments in my life because of, terrible knees and all that other stuff. So I'm not a dancer. I will never be a dancer. I like to dance. You, on the other hand, are a dancer, and I don't think you're a ballerina type dancer. You do other kinds of dance, and I'm wondering, how are you opening yourself up to that as part of your growth as an artist, as a dancer and an artist?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
Well, I can address some of that, I think.
Okay, because I can also restate the question if that
Yeah, maybe.
helps.
Yeah. Can you? Because I'm not sure.
Sure. So to me, someone who dances, Rich says to me, yeah, you're not a juggler, Isolde, you juggle, right? I'm not a dancer, I dance. For you, it seems like that is very much part of your identity.
Yeah.
And even though you stepped out of the stream, to keep going with your analogy, a number of years ago for reasons, for whatever reason, that part doesn't matter. um and you're stepping back in, how are you making that happen for yourself? How are you, let's say you're back in the stream, what steps are you taking to be a dancer?
I see. I am focusing, first of all, I'm focusing a little bit on a different aspect of it than I was before.
Mm-hmm.
because I'm focused more on English country dance calling and teaching
Mm-hmm.
than I was before. But I'm also so that's almost a new track, not completely new, but a little bit new.
Mm-hmm.
But then also I am trying to go back and teach some of these things that I used to teach and stopped. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm, and it's so sad because everything's at a standstill now with the, the pandemic, which is
Mm-hmm.
so. So I was supposed to teach, like I started teaching a Victorian turning dance class again, which was really fun. And it would have been starting up again next week in person,
Mm-hmm.
IRL. But it's been canceled, obviously.
Sure.
And I'm debating whether it's worth trying to do something over Zoom. But so I started doing that class again. And then last night or this morning at 1 a.m. this morning, I taught an Appalachian clogging class.
At 1 a.m.?
Yes, because it was actually for a Russian folk festival.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was 11 a.m. in Russia.
Wow. Well, there you go.
So yeah, and that was exhausting because I haven't, well, because it was 1 a.m., but also because I haven't done any Appalachian clogging in a long time, and I was doing okay, but it was tiring, and I've lost a lot of the control that I used to have. My my steps are all over the place and messy and that kind of stuff, but it was okay.
So let me ask you.
Speaks to the changing how you approach dance, though.
Yeah. Well, it not only that, but do you have to? This is a strange question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have to be able to do it in order to teach it?
Yeah, I know, right? I think that's a really good question, and I think yes, you should. You
Okay.
should be able to do it. And I've seen, like, on So You Think You Can Dance, where they yell at people, because they had the auditions. Everyone, the show I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched it in many years, actually, but they would have people come in for the auditions, and often they try to find the most drama in the auditions and that kind of stuff. But they'd have people come in who are not great dancers, but they talk about how they teach whatever it is they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they look terrible, and the judges would yell at them like, how could you be a teacher? You are not a teacher. You should not be teaching. You're awful. And
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if they'd say you're awful, but they probably did. I can't remember now.
Well, if they were really awful, they would.
Yeah.
Because ratings.
Yeah, exactly. But but I do also believe that you should at least be able to. It is hard to say, especially as, if you could do it in your youth and you can still do it, but less so, then I kind of feel like, yeah, that
Word for
probably
Robert
counts.
right?
Yeah, right.
But I think it works for many of us. There are many people who aging out, maybe you can't be a Broadway dancer anymore, but there are certainly plenty of people who are older dancers, for example, who are still teaching. And as a voice teacher, I'm the same. There are things that I can no longer do. My voice is lowered. I can't hit a high D anymore, but I certainly know how to teach someone the technique, if they're a coloratura or soprano, on how to hit a high D. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's knowing what to teach them, even if physically your body can't do that anymore. And I think there's a lot to be said for the wisdom that comes from the knowledge, and the time that you could do it. And it's funny, my going back to martial arts for a minute, when I injured my knee back in 2014 and couldn't go to Aikido class anymore, I saw my sensei, my teacher, for lunch, and she's like, you need to come back to Aikido. And I said, you know what, Roma, I can barely walk. There's no way I'm going to be able to fall. And she said, this is the perfect time for you to study Aikido, because you will never learn more than when you're injured. And I went to class, and she's like, you can sit in a chair and do this. You do not need to roll. You do not need to fall. And she was absolutely right. You know much more about how you do things when you can't do them so well anymore, because you have to do it just so. And I'm wondering, does the same thing work for you as a dancer? Can you, knowing what other people might have as limitations, through your own more, smaller limitations, but limitations nonetheless, can you teach them better because you have a little bit more empathy for where they are?
Probably, yeah. That's a really good point. The problem I think I have is that the less I do something, the more that imposter syndrome can get in the
Mm,
way,
sure.
you know. And the more it's an excuse for me to go, oh, well, I'm so out of shape. I haven't done it in so long. I have no right to be doing this. That's where I think the real issue is.
Yeah, and that feeling of I have no right to be doing this is one that I want all of us to be able to drop kick somewhere,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yet you're doing all these Zoom classes because there are people out there saying, "Get out there and do something. We need your, put your
Uh,
expertise out there."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the point of people, and it's interesting to me. I can dance a few English country dances. I could probably do like Horses Brawl and Hole in the Wall, and maybe that's it. Um, and Sellinger's Round. I remember Sellinger's Round as far as English country dance tunes, but there is a market. There are people who want to be learning these dances, and they're
Yeah.
out there everywhere. So you, as a great teacher and someone who can do this, you can help a lot of people do something that they want to do, even if they're never going to be professionals at it, just
Mhm.
for the joy of the dance. That
Yeah.
must feel really great, actually. Like, oh, I can teach this to you, and you can do
That
something you've
reminds me of
never.
that movie, Fighting with My Family.
Oh, that was so good.
Oh, tell me
Uh,
about it. I don't think I ever saw it.
oh, it's so good. But it's basically about a brother and sister who try out for pro wrestling. And she gets the audition, and he doesn't, even though he's been dedicating his whole life to doing
Oh,
this.
wow.
And the stories are kind of told in parallel. Both of them great. Um, but obviously, he is crushed by the fact that he didn't get this audition.
Hmm.
And yet, kind of the redemption of that at the end is that he sort of rolls it into teaching the people in his community how to do this wrestling,
Mm.
and gets fulfillment that way. Can't recommend that movie enough.
It was a great movie. Florence Pugh. Who was
Oh,
Yeah.
she's great. She's great.
Yeah.
She's great.
um,
Well, I'll have to put that in my queue.
yeah, I was gonna say something, and of course I forgot what it was. So the class that I'm teaching now actually I'm really really enjoying the class that I'm teaching now. I don't know if you know about it. I'm doing a Zoom class on English country dance style and technique because we're all social distancing, and we're home alone, and well, not, or
We're
we're
home
home.
with the people who share our houses. We're home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many of us are alone, and so some people, some friends of mine, including, have started creating English country dances for one, which is awesome that they're doing that. But I personally don't see the point. I'm like, part of what's so fun about English country dancing is the sort of puzzleness of it, the sort of
Hmm.
interacting, moving in between bodies and stuff, and then still ending up where you need to be to progress, right?
Right.
A, and B, the community, interacting with other people and flirting with them, and your movements change as you move among other people. So to do that alone in my house just seems like, why bother, And so I mean, I'm glad that they're having fun with it, and I've done one or two things, and it is fun. But after a while, I just sort of goof off and do my own thing anyway. But so I figured, why not do a class that, since we are alone, it's also getting to the point now where people are more, and this caller Joanna Reiner said this first. I'm not being brilliant by saying this, but there's more of a focus now on learning dances, learning steps, learning figures,
Hmm.
learning sequences, and not about learning how to dance well. And that's a huge difference that I think should be addressed. And so here we are in a time and place where we can't interact with other people. So it seemed like the perfect time to focus on how to dance better, how to improve our quality of movement. And so
Oh, that's great.
yeah, and so that's what my class is about. And the tricky thing is, though, I'm doing ballet warm-ups, and they're not terribly advanced ballet warm-ups, but these are people who often have never ever done ballet warm-ups. So I think it's challenging.
Sure.
So, and I think that they're like the first class, it's amazing. The first class I had over 80 people. This is on Zoom.
Right. Wow.
Over 80 people, which was amazing, but I think they didn't know what they were getting into. And then the second class, I had 30 people. So
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's sort of self-selective, and
yeah,
they kind of went, "Oh no, my back hurts too much for this," or whatever. And the irony, of course, is that if they did it and worked through
would-
that a little bit, it would improve their aching back.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
very
And
very much so.
yeah, and I'm always saying, listen to your body, only do what you feel comfortable with, push yourself a little bit, but we don't want any pain, we don't want any injury, all that good stuff. And of course I can't see them. It's Zoom. It's a big webinar kind of thing. So they can see me, but I can't see them.
Hmm.
Um, so, but yeah, exactly. If they do more of it, then, it will help them feel better and work through some of those pains probably.
Movement is everything. For me especially, I notice that if I don't move, if I spend a day writing and I'm just sitting there, the
Mhm.
next day I'm sore like gangbusters. So Renee, I want to ask you, and then Alex, I want to ask you because I know I've kept you for a long time, and we could keep talking, but at the same
What?
time, you have things you want to do today, I'm sure. So what is your ultimate goal, Renee? And then I'm going to ask you the same, Alex. But first, you, Renee, what is your ultimate goal? What is it? If you could do anything, what would you be doing?
Um, I first also want to say that I am so lucky and so privileged. I know how privileged I am because I do not make a lot of money. I hardly make any money. And if Alex didn't have his full-time job, I would be in deep, deep doo-doo. So I just want to acknowledge that I know how lucky I am. And it's not always easy to just, you know, do what you want, which is what I'm doing. I think I did a goals workshop with the same my writers group. I had somebody come in and talk to us about goals, and she
Hmm.
asked me the same question, and I was like, well, and what I said was, I want to be a go-to person for English country dance. I want to be the person. I want to be somebody that they call and say, come and be the dance master at our ball. That kind of a thing. Does that
That's
make
very
sense?
cool. Yeah, of course it makes sense. It's what you want to do. By definition, it makes sense.
I mean,
It's
there's lots of things that I want to do, and that's one of them. But yeah,
mhm.
that is a sort of concrete thing.
And it's and it having one of the things that I've noticed about my own goal structure in my life is having concrete goals is so much of the whole thing. Just knowing what the goal is, what a goal is, makes so much difference. Because otherwise, I end up sitting there and I spin my wheels. I'm like the little hamster in the little wheel, running, 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 tiring myself out, but not getting anywhere. And it's only when I've started focusing on what it is that I want, really specifically, that things have started happening. Otherwise, I spread myself. I think I need to be a mile deep, but instead I've been a mile wide most of my life. So
Yeah,
focusing in on those goals, and you can have more than one, but as long as you know what they are specifically, I think that makes a lot of difference in a creative life or otherwise.
yeah. That whole stream, my trajectory for that's part of the problem with my sort of career trajectory is because yes, I was always in the dance stream, but I
Hmm.
was all over that thing. I still am. You know what I mean? I was doing clogging or ballroom or this or that. Constantly. And so if I had just sort of chose one and went along that one solid straight line, then I might have been further along, whatever. Than
you
I am.
know I
Okay,
it's
you know what you want to do until you've tried it and realize you don't.
Yeah, it's almost the Sondheim line. Yep.
Yeah, that's I think, it's funny. That's part of it, but there's also something to be said for me anyway about curiosity. I
Yeah.
find myself being curious about so many things, and I can't put it down until I've tried it.
Yeah.
I just can't, because otherwise it just keeps bothering me. And sometimes you do, like you said, Alex, you need to know whether or not it's not for you, and you can't know until you actually pick it up and play with it some, whatever it is.
Yeah. That's what I like about journalism. Not that I do a whole lot of that, but yeah, I'm curious about everything. So I like, finding that's what they say you need for journalism is a,
Healthy
unrelenting
sense of
curiosity.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Marie Forleo, I don't know if you know who she is. She's sort of a life coach guru type person, but she says that she calls herself a multi-passionate entrepreneur. And
Right.
and I'm like, yeah, I can get behind that. I have many passions. I just don't necessarily have to try and make each one of those passions my career. And that's been a life lesson for me as a creative person, that not everything I find fascinating is something that has to be a moneymaker.
Yeah,
You know?
that's good.
Yeah. So Alex, talk to me. What about you? What is in the Alex Bradley goal uh order?
Well, I feel like I can speak from currently having a full-time work that I really enjoy.
Yay.
Yeah, that helps
So much.
Yes.
because I have always been sort of the mile wide instead of mile deep kind of guy. My interests range all over the place,
Mhm.
and I'm definitely always attracted by the shiny new thing. I feel like a lot of creative people are.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I'm coming to, like, I think a goal used to be like when we first moved to LA, my goal was I would like to be known for what I do. I'd like to get a little, acknowledgement that I'm good at what I do. But now it's really not. I don't really need to be acknowledged for it as long as I get, compensated enough to live on.
Mhm.
I feel like if I'm comfortable enough, I'm happy exploring. You know, there's part of me every once in a while that bubbles up and says, "Well, I do want to get that novel out. I do want to publish some stories. I do want to do that graphic novel I was thinking of. I do want to animate this thing." And if I had an oven or a stovetop with all the burners that I keep going, it would be like a football field.
I
Oh, I
know,
hear
right?
you.
um, so, but I feel like I'm building a life now where I can be a dilettante. I can just sort of, dip a little into that well and poke a little in that, just enough to find a little, the creative fulfillment in it. And then if it's no longer doing it for me, I can leave it and do something else. But I think that wouldn't work if I didn't have um,
This
the,
job.
the job right now.
Yeah.
When I didn't have that and I was stressing out about making enough money to get by, oh my God, I was a nightmare.
I'll also say that this job is so great because, and I want to sort of tread lightly here, but basically this job is a 9 to 6, right?
Yeah.
Yes. 9 to 6, hour for lunch, and then he's done,
Mm-hmm.
which is amazing because literally, because there are so many jobs, especially here in LA and in this industry, where it's a 10-hour workday is normal.
And work later if we have to.
And then work later if you have to. A 60-hour work week is normal.
Mhm.
And expected.
Yeah.
And it's so appalling, I think, frankly, and often for, not enough money and not enough benefits and all of that stuff. And so this is actually a job where they know and understand how exhausting it is, and they don't want them to work past an 8-hour day, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the benefits aren't amazing. The pay is not amazing, but it's enough that we can get by and it's comfortable. And I'm finding that that's just fine.
Yeah, but they appreciate,
Yeah, they
their
do.
workers.
Yeah, they do.
And now there's no commute, so
Yeah.
Which is even better. But what you just said, I think, is really fabulous, because that idea of working somewhere that is creative, which is one of your goals,
Yes.
is also, it's buoyed up by being appreciated for the
Right.
work you're doing. And that's so much of it, so much of having I do a lot of work in leadership and go into companies and teach them how to be better leaders through creativity. And this idea of appreciating people for their ingenuity, for their creative thinking, and really helping them be their best is so important. And it sounds like your bosses have got that going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's a creative himself,
Seth Green.
There's more owners than that, but Seth Green is the one everyone knows. But I think if you're an artist too, and then you run a business, you have more sympathy towards artists.
Yeah, absolutely. And
We should
it,
send you that picture, by the way. Did you see that picture of us with Seth Green at the Christmas party? That was great.
no, well, maybe I did. I don't know. Send it to me. I'd love to put it in the show notes if that's okay. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. That would be
Um,
fun.
yeah, because there's going to be these show notes are going to be huge. And so, so yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to sort of ping on a little bit, and now before I forget it, this idea of having a kind of a set work schedule, it leaves you more time to create the stuff you want to do, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's something, that allocation of your mental and artistic resources for both of you, it has to be a time thing. It has to be am I in a headspace to do it? Do I have the time to do it? How do you balance that? Does the work being, for you, Alex, is the work being more regular or leave you more time for that? And Renee, with trying to, for me, I like the schedule for myself. Rich, my husband, has a tough time with, if he doesn't have a schedule, he doesn't do things. He sits on Facebook. So,
Let me talk about that.
Yeah.
you know, but that's so important. You know, it's so important to go, okay, maybe you need a set deadline in order to get stuff done. How do you two do that? How do you allocate your mental, emotional, physical resources to do your own creative work in addition to the other work you're doing?
All
That's
right,
very hard.
I do have a couple things to say about that.
Okay.
I quit the job doing blurring nudie parts to focus on my writing.
Uh-huh.
And I did, it worked for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but it was really hard for me to build up the discipline to keep working without a fixed deadline,
Mm-hmm.
except for Miskatonic. When I started that, like, I think I was on a break with that when that started, but then I started a new season of it in that time.
Mm-hmm.
But you have deadlines with that. You know
Exactly.
You
I
put
know
it
I
out
need to
every-
put something out every week, and
Right.
so it's like there's always something that compels me to do another one.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I don't just quit and give up the whole thing again. But so far it's going well enough that, you know, I have a regular deadline and it's something that is out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think the two go hand in hand. If you don't have a deadline, it's just never going to get done.
Right.
When I had the most time to work on my writing, I got the least amount of writing
Yeah.
done. This last NaNoWriMo, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's the National Novel Writing Month. It usually takes place in November. I was working at the time. I was working
right?
full time, and yet I accomplished NaNoWriMo while I was working, which is writing 50,000 words in 30 days. And I don't know, for me, not having, it was about building the discipline to find time to write when I had other stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the more busy I am, the better I am about getting stuff done.
Yeah.
I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really do. Yeah.
Something about having to carve out the time for it
Right.
builds in the discipline.
Right.
But it's not just the discipline. I feel like there's an inspiration that happens when you're a little bit under the gun like that.
Yeah.
You know, inspiration from desperation, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's something to that when I set myself deadlines and go, this is going to happen by June 1st or whatever, then I know that I have to do it. I have to do something every day or every minute or whatever to meet that deadline. Because if it's sort of ephemeral, then the work will be ephemeral. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. If somebody else isn't relying on it, like I know other people out there are waiting for a new episode of Miskatonic. So that drives me.
Mm-hmm.
If it was just me, the only person reading it, then I wouldn't be happy.
Yeah, and I'm having that problem now because I was supposed to present a paper at a musical theater conference in June, and I was behind on it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pandemic hit, and everything got canceled, including that conference. And so I basically stopped working on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hadn't gotten very far anyway, so it wasn't like, you know. But now I'm just not working on it at all, which is kind of sad. You know, I wanted to do it, and I still kind of want to do it. But there's no reason to,
Right.
You know, except because I want to, and that's a good reason, but not enough to actually get me to do it.
Right. And what I do for myself there is I create sort of fake deadlines for myself. And I will say, I will I one of my books is called Get Your Stuff Done, and it's all about that. It's like, okay, it's a deadline I've created for myself. By 3 months from now it'll be done, and not only that, but I tell other people.
Yes, I
You
was
know.
going to say
So
accountability is huge.
yeah, that makes it work for me. That's what I have to do sometimes in order to make sure that I meet my music goals or writing goals or whatever goals.
Yeah.
Without that kind of, I tell my best friend, I'm like, Kristen, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have this done by August 1st. And she's like, okay, I'm putting it in my calendar. I'm going to be checking in with you on August 1st. And I'm
That
so
goes back
grateful.
to involving other people and creativity.
Yep.
You can't do it on your own.
No, and and it's funny. Rich and I just did this thing, and I'm going to ask you two about your collaborations in a second. So he drew this little pencil marker sketch, and he started it as a little doodle, and it ended up being this really cool drawing, black and white drawing of a woman leaving a cabin and walking into the forest, and I went, you know what? I think I want to color that. And he said, really? I'm like, yeah. So he gave me the original, which I refused to color. I'm like, no, I'm not going to mess up your original. So we photocopied it, and I took it and I colored it. And he was like, I don't think I would have, I don't know if I'd have chosen those colors. Those are good colors. And because I don't draw, I was like, yay, but we both sort of went, this wouldn't have been as good. It wouldn't exist without Rich doing his part, but it wouldn't have been quite as good if I hadn't done my part. There was something better about it having becoming in color. And Rich just went, see, that's what happens when you collaborate in art. And he moved on with his day. And I went, oh, yes, that's it. Wow. So how about you two? What kind of collaborations have you done? And what are, if any, are you doing now?
That's awesome. I was thinking about this morning. For some reason, I don't know why. It just sort of, I bet I know why. Because I'm reading a book that was written by two people who were strangers, by the way, but it's a YA novel. But we actually had an idea for a screenplay that we never got past just talking about it. At least not yet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, like I said, it jumped in my head this morning because of this book, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I feel like most of the collaboration, if you can call it that we do, is me dragging him into teaching classes with me. Because I'll go, hey, I'm going to teach this, Victorian turning dance class. You're obviously going to be there, right? You're my partner. I need you there.
We definitely collaborated on the Dancing Through the Centuries video because I did some artwork for that.
But that was a long time ago. Yeah.
And some graphic design stuff. But yeah, it's probably comes out mostly in the dancing, although the idea of doing a screenplay together really excites me.
Yeah, that's true. It's exciting. And I have a different screenplay idea that I haven't started writing.
Like I said, everybody who moves out here has to start screenwriting. It's like the law.
Right. I understand. That happens.
Mostly, I think we just support each other.
Yeah.
More than anything else, which is huge. It's huge.
It's everything.
It's everything.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying about, you can't really create art by yourself because at the very least you support other people or other people, you need other support from other people and encouragement from other people. So it's huge.
Yeah, I agree. And and what's really interesting to me, I was lurking on the Miskatonic website, and there are so many people. You took a break in, I guess, 2013 or something like that, and you were taking time off to do NaNoWriMo or something. And there were people who are like, okay, we're getting out the pitchforks because it's December and you're still not back. And then you came on, Alex, and you were like, I know, but December is now busier than November was. So I'm going to try in January. And then January 3rd, these people were like, okay, where are you? Because we need our fix. And that must have been so incredibly motivating that there are people out there who are like, okay, we need your art.
Exactly.
Come on, Yeah.
What I love too is that there's only a handful of people, I think, but there's a handful of people who comment every week on his
wonderful.
Which is fantastic. It's sort of like I was saying about my class, I had 80 people and then 30 people. And, I'm sure I'm going to end up with a small, but loyal core.
Yeah.
And that's who you do it for, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. It may only be 3 people I'm writing for, but
But you
But
know,
they're not.
here's what's interesting about that. And this is going to come a little bit from me knowing you for many years.
Yeah.
And that is the Jonathan Colton Joko Crazy Cruise thing, which I've never been on, and I know you two are frequent attendees.
Yes.
And I remember one year you created a you drew and created a T-shirt of the main people who were going to be sort of the talent on the cruise as superheroes. And I remember everybody I talked to who knew anything about this cruise was like, "You are not going to believe what Alex Bradley did. This is so awesome."
Yeah.
And and I don't know if you and I would like to know from you, because I don't know if you did it because you were like, "Ooh, maybe they'll buy it," or did you go, "This is going to be something that's cool that's art that I can share that's going to speak to a lot of people."
So the
What
story about
Wait,
that.
can I?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry. First of all, that is the story. Actually, that is really the reason. That generally is really the reason why we moved to LA, why we did all this stuff, because we went on the cruise in 2011 was the first cruise,
Mhm,
and it was small. There was only 250 people who were part of the cruise,
mhm.
and then the rest of the ship was other people. You know what I mean? And we met, so on this cruise we met so many people who were just amazing and were impressed by the fact that Alex did this video, because it was a video, it wasn't a t-shirt, it was
Yeah,
a
I
video
was going to
first.
explain that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I thought
And
I thought I remember it being a T-shirt. Interesting.
It
Okay,
was
go ahead.
also.
it was also a t-shirt,
Okay.
but it was a video first. But so he made this video,
Mhm.
and anyway, I should let you explain.
Okay. Yeah. Sidebar. First year there was a video contest,
Oh,
which
that's
never really
right.
went anywhere.
I forgot it
But
was
it
a
was to
contest.
make a 1-minute video about the cruise and how excited you were to be going on the cruise. And
Mhm.
instead of just doing a video, I did this 1-minute animation of like the intro to the Super Friends, but replacing all the superheroes with people on the cruise.
Awesome.
And obviously, it won the contest insofar as they were actually paying attention to the contest.
Yeah, it was sort of disappointing because they said they were going to like show the winning entries on the cruise.
Yeah, but they just weren't set up for it, and whatever. But still, enough people had seen it that if I introduced myself as the person who did that video on that cruise, everyone knew immediately who I was and remembered after that. And I did a T-shirt to
remind people.
yeah, and I was wearing the T-shirt. That was kind of my introduction to people on the boat, was to be wearing the T-shirt. And I did that 4 years running. Basically, I did an animated video and a T-shirt for 4 years,
Mhm.
and that definitely cemented who people think of me as from that cruise.
Right. But
Right.
that was the thing too, is that so we go that very first cruise, and the very first day they have a welcoming reception. And like I said, it was small. It was only 250 people or so. And so, and I think even in the reception there weren't even that many. And so they have this reception, and the celebrities are there, the musical entertainer people, Jonathan Colton and Paul and Storm, and the other, Will Wheaton from Star Trek, right? John Hodgman, these sort of well-known celebrities.
Mhm.
We get there. First thing they do is see him and see that T-shirt and go, "Oh my God, you did that? That was you? Holy cow, I want to shake your hand. That was amazing." And immediately we knew people. We had contacts who were fairly big contacts, and then we met this friend Perry, who at the time drew for Bob's Burgers, or was just starting on Bob's Burgers, I think.
Yeah.
He used to draw for Family Guy, stuff like that. And he was like, and he lives here, and he was like, "You totally could come to LA and do animation or whatever." So immediately we had all these people just encouraging us and supporting us. And that's what really made us go, "Oh, maybe we should really do this."
that.
Right. That's so cool. I love that this is
Not everyone can go on a life-changing cruise.
No, it's true.
But you can find a community that supports what you do and loves what you do and gives you that.
And I think that's the key. I think that's the key right there. You can find a community that where there will be mutual support of each other's work and art and dreams. And sometimes you're the supporter and sometimes you're the one being supported, but either way, that notion of following your creative dreams in community because you get to support each other is key to that, to whatever you're going to consider success.
Yeah.
So as I said, I said this like a half an hour ago that I was going to let you go soon, but we find other things to talk about. So
This is
before
so
we
fun
go,
though.
I know it is. It's a lot of fun, and I'm so grateful to both of you for taking the time, because this is an important conversation to be having, because I think the way we approach creativity and the way we approach being artistic is going to change a lot, in part because
Yes.
we're all stuck in our apartments, but also because things have to change right now,
Yes.
and because they have to change, having a pathway, having a stream to step into, to use your analogy, Renee, is, I think, really important. And you just have to identify what stream that is, and then jump on in. But before we go,
I'm
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead. Uh-huh.
Can I say too, it's so funny to me because I feel like the fact that we're now, social isolating and using Zoom for everything, I almost feel like this is helping me more, like I'm expanding more than I was before because I'm reaching an enormous audience.
Exactly.
I have the potential to reach people all across the country, if not the world.
Finally, we're learning what this digital revolution is supposed to be doing.
I know, it's amazing.
It is, and because of that, it's one of those things where, when we're not social distancing in the future, whenever that is, you will now have a community that's national or even worldwide, and that is an amazing thing. So
I taught in Moscow this morning, for heaven's sake.
exactly, and the technology allows us to do that. I always love to say that technology is wonderful until it isn't.
Yeah.
So having this opportunity for it to be wonderful and to be available during this time, I think, is very different than it would have been even 15 years ago. So in that way, we're very lucky we have the tech we do. Uh,
Yes.
and I'm this podcast wouldn't have existed 15 years ago, and now it can reach thousands of people, because there are people who are going, okay, this is my time. What else am I going to do with my time? Well, maybe I'll look up what it's like to be creative. This is something I've always wanted to do. And you two have provided some incredible information on how to get going, which I'm really grateful for. And so will the listeners be. I need to shout out to you, Alex, real quickly, that your headshot is a pencil illustration. So if you're listening to this, go to the show notes and look at Alex's headshot, because his headshot, the picture of him, is something he drew. It's not a picture. It's not a photograph. It's a drawing, and it's super cool.
It's amazing.
It's so cool. Yeah, I was like, wait, this is about, wow. Okay. But since I'm already telling you, go and look things up, please, both of you, can you share where people can find you? Where can people find you? Your website.
I'm laughing because I've been trying to revamp my website for like 6 years, something like that. Since as long as I've had the damn thing. But I'm working on it. But my website is reneecamus.com. This is my name.com. And then I'm on Facebook and Twitter, CAMUSR6 at Twitter. I don't tweet a lot, but it's there. And then I actually forget what my Facebook page is. It's reneecamus.writer.dancer or something like that.
It's renee.camus.writer.dancer.
Is it really?
Because I'm looking at it.
Okay, cool. The big difference is my personal timeline does not have the accent, and then my page does have the accent. So make of that what you will.
Now the question, see, it took me to Renee Camus home, which does have an accent.
Okay, that's probably the page.
It's not your personal. It's right. Your, yeah.
Perfect.
There, I know it.
I don't use Facebook or Twitter enough to really justify putting that stuff out there. But if you look up Alex Bradley on Facebook, my profile picture is the same as that illustration. So that'll be the one to recognize. My portfolio site is alexbradley.org. I once had alexbradley.com, but that got lost along the way somewhere.
It's bought out by a cigar company. It makes me really angry.
But you can see those videos I did for the cruise on that website.
Very cool.
And the webcomic is Miskatonic U at misk-u.com. And I also have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/AlexBradley.
Ooh. Talk about Patreon for a second. What is Patreon?
Patreon is a site for independent artists to put their work out in the world and gather together people who want to help you. You offer rewards for tiers of support. That's TIER.
Or maybe TEEARS sometimes too. You never know.
But you can set it up so that people can support you like for $1 a month, and they just get to read your blog on the site. I guess that qualifies as my blog. Or as high as you want. You could do $100 a month, and if someone chooses you to support you at that level, that's amazing. But you need to sort of pitch your reward levels to match the amount they're actually supporting you.
Okay. So to be commensurate with it.
Yeah. So like people can get personalized artwork done for them, or they get to see like your screenplay before it's out in the world. Like you can offer people to see behind the scenes or ask you questions about your process and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, the people who are looking for a way to support you, that's where they can support you financially. Some people have actually been able to work full time through Patreon.
Right.
Wow.
As a creative.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at that level, but I also haven't really been putting so much into that would support me. But the potential is there. If it's kind of a great site.
Yeah. Isolde, do you have a Patreon?
I think I had a Patreon, and then I realized that that I had no concept of what to offer.
Yeah.
Just because like as an artist, you can go, oh, you can have a digital image of this, or you can have this, or you can, and I'm kind of going, I don't know. So I got lost in the TIER system became the TEAR system for me, and I got lost in the process of creating it. So I think I still have one, but I have no earthly idea even how to get back into it.
As with things like Kickstarter or other crowdfunding things, there's an art to it, there's a process to it, and it's worth doing more research on it to make it work for you. But
yeah,
because your podcast is one thing, obviously.
Yeah,
that could be a reward, but yeah, finding the other stuff is.
Yeah, but see, the podcast is out. This is so far anyway. It's a labor of love, and maybe it'll become a labor of sponsored love someday. That would be cool. But really, this is that's the thing about Patreon is if you're giving like $1 a month, you could be listening to the podcast, but you can also listen to the podcast without giving anything. And that's why I have a little trouble. And I wonder if as a creative person, if that's one of my confidence triggers that's going, well, what is my creative stuff worth?
I bet he has a ton of ideas.
Definitely.
Well, and he just started a Patreon account. Actually, he took him a very long time, and he just came over to me yesterday, I think, and was like, "Look, I got my first sponsor," and his I think his artists like you, Alex, and Rich, your creative output lends itself really well.
Yeah.
To something like Patreon. And that's that whole mile wide versus mile deep thing. I still haven't figured out what my niche is enough to make it so that it's worthwhile. So when I do, I'll let you know.
It's great that Rich is on Patreon. I feel like he should have been on it ages ago because he's constantly doodling and creating.
I know.
And actual tangible things that he can share with the world. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I know.
I do Miskatonic for absolute free, but because I just do it for the fun of it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the thing. We haven't talked, maybe for a good reason, we haven't talked at all about money, really.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother, and we could go another hour or two just on that, but we don't want to do that. But it's true. But I feel like something that has come up in the circles that I'm, of people that I'm dealing with, like in the dance community, is that people want to help. And often if you allow people to give donations, or allow people, sort of say, if you're willing to give a donation, please, that would be great, especially now, obviously, when a lot of, performers are not able to work. But if you sort of not just ask, but give permission in a way for people to give donations and be supportive, they want to do it. And one of the things we've talked about in the dance community is giving donations, and also pay what you can kinds of things. And there are some people who will come in and pay $2 for a dance because they can't pay anything more, or nothing for a dance. And then there are people who, we'll say $12 recommended, but pay what you can. Then there are people who come in and they'll give 20 because they want to show the support. So, Patreon is just another way to allow people to support you.
There's definitely a pitfall that you will turn it into a machine for making stuff that for the people who are supporting you. So that
is that bad?
Well, if that's getting in the way of what you creatively really want to work on, then it can be a problem again. So there's balance.
I need to have you both back on the show sometime very soon, and I want to talk about this because there's a real conversation to be had for artistic people and money, and because so much of art, I think, is undervalued, but also we don't have sponsors anymore, the Duke is sponsoring, right? We just we're in a different world now, and I think that is a conversation that we really do need to have. How do we do that? What are the best ways to navigate being a creative person and being even a creative entrepreneur? Because you can't just be an artist nowadays. You have to be an artist and a business person. And how do you do that? What is the best way to navigate it so that you feel like you get to be a creative and do your creative outlet, but also get the support you need, both emotionally and, let's call it, financially, to keep doing it? So will you come back and let's talk about that? I would love to have you back.
Absolutely.
I would love it.
Awesome. That would be, because I think that's an important conversation, and one we really do need to be having, especially right now when so many people are moving into a new way of living. We have to. So
that's one that I really excel at, in the whole giving advice that I don't follow myself arena. So
again, welcome. We have cookies. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That, and that's, and it's not about giving advice to me. Honestly, it's about exploring the topic. And it's one that I think we ignore at our peril. I think people who are, and fundamentally, I think everybody is creative in one way or another. So it's a conversation we can all participate in and get something out of. So I have a question that I ask of every guest, and it's a strange question, but it's mine. If you could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Jeez, I have no idea.
I feel like the last Joko Cruz shirt I made has a motto on it that I really love, which is, how did that phrase? Become who you were meant to be, or something like that. Yeah. Become who you will be, or something. I have the T-shirt in the drawer. I can go get it. Yeah.
Go get it. Because it would be great.
Oh, that might be in the wash.
I think I have one. Look in my drawer. The pink one. It kind of stands out. I think what I would say, I was thinking about it now.
Is become who you will be.
Become who you will be.
Nice.
Become who you will be.
So it's all about, having a picture of that future you want for yourself, and taking steps towards becoming that. It's a lifelong process.
Oh, I think so. Absolutely.
And I guess what I was going to say is what I said before, which is just go for it anyway. Just do it anyway.
Okay. I like both of those.
Do it anyway.
Yeah, I like that. Do it anyway.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, now I feel like I have to qualify. As long as
you don't be a dick.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you don't hurt yourself or anyone else, do it anyway.
Right. douchey behavior not allowed.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much. Alex Bradley and Renee Camus have been my guests today on the show. We've covered so many topics, but really, this has been a masterclass in how to be creative and how to live a creative life. So I'm so grateful to you both for being here.
Thank you so much. This was so super fun.
I'm so glad, and I'm so excited you're going to come back to the show. So this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Mindset Podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please consider leaving a review of the show on iTunes or wherever you listen. And also join the community, subscribe, because there are going to be more of these kinds of really amazing conversations that really explore what it means to live a creative life and to have a creative mindset so that you can do your best work and live your best life. This is, again, Isolde Trachtenberg, and I'm sending you all of my love. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2020. Today's music was Kevin MacLeod's Ave Marimba, brought to you by Creative Commons License 3.0, and Summer Fashion by Alexander Shamaluev. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I send you all of my love.